Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing, and a wonderful conversation, longer than we were expected to have, with Mark Gubicza, a longtime Kansas City Royal, very successful in his early years as a pitcher, racked by injuries through much of his career, but he fought through to carve out a long and tremendous career, almost all of it with the Kansas City Royals. Big-time high school star, drafted by the Royals, wanted to be with his hometown team, the Phillies, but got over that quickly, made the major leagues at 21 years of age, and had that successful career. And after just a short period away from the game, got back into coaching and broadcasting, and of course for years now has been the color analyst on television for the, various permutations of the Angels, be it Anaheim, Los Angeles, California, whatever it is at any particular time. He's very respected in the industry. He's been married since he was 22 years old, now is a grandfather. It's a cool story that he told us on the way to the ballpark where he was getting set for a game. He actually said he had about 25, 30 minutes, and we ended up talking more. So that is your treat right here, as our Kansas City profile is Mark Gubicza, and it comes your way next, presented by Easton Roofing.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Hey Kansas City, Joe Spiker, Easton Roofing here. Well, it hailed like crazy, and the last thing you want to do is deal with another roofer. So don't. When they show up, tell them you know a guy. An Easton Roofing sign in your yard lets everybody know you want it done right, and it's the best storm chaser repellent you can get. Call us today for a free, no-obligation inspection, 913-257-5426 or eastonroofing.com. Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
We're here at the 23rd Street Brewery with Matt Llewellyn. And Matt, you've got a great menu. You fine-tuned it a little bit. Great beers. There's always something to be had to put a smile on your face at the 23rd Street Brewery.
Oh, you bet. And Brian Haney would always say, come have the Haney turkey stack. Bill Self would say, come have the Bill Self pasta. I would say, come have the Bill Self pasta. It's great. Great mac and cheese, buffalo mac and cheese. And we've got a ton of other menu items that you're sure to love. We've got a great brewer who's brewing great beer. And if you like craft beer, our guy's the way to go. And we're making great drinks, too. There's a great new distillery in the state of Kansas called Llewellyn Distillery. My brother's doing that. He makes some great whiskey and vodka and rum, and we're doing all kinds of great drinks with those beverages.
Always fun to be had at the 23rd Street Brewery, 23rd and Castle. Come on by anytime and have a good time. If you'd like to join these and other fine sponsors and market your business to Kansas City's #1 variety podcast, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to working with you. Mark, you grew up in Philadelphia, born in Philadelphia, raised in that particular area. What was it like as a child of the 60s in the early part of your life, 5, 6, 7 years old in Philadelphia?
Oh, it was a lot of fun, living in a row home with 3 older brothers. And, you constantly have an opportunity to play some kind of game, whether it's stickball, wiffle ball, basketball, football, hockey, street hockey. And then having a bunch of buddies all live right there, close to each other. We always had a good time. Those days were fun for me because, my mom and dad, my dad was working and my mom being at home, she'd just say, just make sure you're home for dinner or make sure you're, obviously that's summertime, but school days, as soon as you come home from school, going out and do the same stuff. So I think that really helped develop me on all the sports I played because I was able to do something like every single day with a bunch of buddies and my brothers.
Tell me about your mom and dad.
My dad, he actually, believe it or not, was he played in the minor leagues when he was younger with the Chicago White Sox in like 50-51. My mom and dad met each other at high school, Roxborough High School, in the Roxborough area. And then my dad, after he was done playing, he didn't really talk a lot about his playing career, hardly ever. But then mailman for 35 years, coached Little League baseball, then he eventually coached over high school baseball over at Penn Charter when I was there, and then coached 9th and 10th grade football and basketball over there too. So he was constantly over there working and coaching, and then he eventually ended up being a pitching coach for Villanova, and he won cool thing about that. At that point, Villanova, I don't know if they've won since, but that year he was, or 2 years he was there as a pitching coach, they actually won the Big East Conference, which is the first time they had ever won. And I know Mo Vaughn and John Valentin came up to me when, I saw them with the Red Sox, and they go, with a last name like mine, they're like, you got to have, it's got to be somewhat related to it. I said, oh yeah, it's my dad. He goes, oh, he was a great person. So I constantly get in contact. I saw somebody out in Kansas City just the other day that was over there at Villanova when he was there. So it's like a connection. Even though he's been gone for a long, long time, that it's still a connection that I feel that he's still around here. So my mom, her brother was one of the most decorated CIA agents, was killed over in Beirut back in 1983, one of those original, bombing attacks on a building over there. Actually there's a book written about him called The Good Spy. And I just found out they're actually going to be doing a movie about him because he actually worked under, JFK, Lyndon Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, and Reagan. And he was only 48 when he was killed. So pretty cool. We none of us knew it at all. He also played for LaSalle College when they won the national championship when Bob Lola was there as one of their big star basketball players. So pretty cool to find out all that. A lot of that stuff found out for CIA stuff afterwards, and I still stay connected with, my aunt, his wife, still to this day, and a lot of my cousins too. So, my Uncle Bob, Robert Ames, his name was. So yeah, pretty cool little connections over the years.
It seemed like you became a good ball player pretty fast. I see this note here in Little League. You played shortstop, and in one 17-game stretch, you had 57 hits. That would be more than 3 a game. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was fun though, because the crazy thing about that was, because being, my 3 older brothers were not tall, yet I was pretty tall. So everyone's always thinking, wow, was I messing around with my birth certificate or something to play in there. So it was always kind of funny. Like the parents were always wondering how old I really was and all this stuff. It was hilarious. But you know what? I love to swing the bat. I love playing shortstop. I pitched also, but I love hitting the ball probably more than pitching, even though that's where I ended up being in my professional career. But I loved hitting, and I know some people still say that might have been a record back in those days. But I just love hitting. That's for sure.
So when did you feel like this might become something? Obviously, you're a star Little League player, but that's got to develop even more. And you went to William Penn Charter School. There was another future professional baseball player there. But when did you feel like you were coming into your own?
You know what? That's a good question, Andy. That's the only thing I've ever thought of my whole life. I know a lot of, especially guys growing up in my neighborhood, wanted to be policemen or firemen or anything else like that. But the only thing I ever thought about was baseball. And it was, it's easier to say that now because I got lucked out into it and actually played it. But it's all, from throwing a baseball off the telephone wires in front of my house and reacting it and catching it before it hit the ground, or throwing it off the front of the. Well, it's all I ever thought about doing. Obviously, during the wintertime, it's more difficult to throw a baseball around back in Philly, but that's, all I thought about. And then, going to Penn, my freshman year, you couldn't make the varsity, so I wasn't on the team. I was on the JV. I saw a number of the players, and I said, I think I can compete there. And, by my junior year, after my junior year in high school, I was sort of an all-star team for American Legion. We were playing the East versus West, and on our team we had, Robbie Wine, who's Bobby Wine's son with the Phillies. Steve Bono ended up being a great quarterback over the years in the NFL. He was on our team. And David Amaro, he was on our team. Ruben Amaro's brother and Ruben Amaro's senior son. And Jamie Moyer was on there. So they were all the scouts, believe it or not, were all looking at those guys. And that was our eastern part of Pennsylvania. We were taking on, western part of Pennsylvania Stars too, which they always had a lot of really good players out in western Pennsylvania, whether it's football players, especially quarterbacks, or baseball players. So, when they're scouting those guys, and all of a sudden, I was doing well, and they're like, all of a sudden I got on their radar. So then my senior year at Penn Charter, for the first game I threw, all of a sudden I see all these guys, with radar guns and everything. Every time I would lift my arm up, they're like pointing it at us. So like, oh wow, this is crazy. So then you understand and hear who's there. Whether it's the Atlanta Braves were there, I know that a number of different teams. I didn't know Kansas City was even interested in me. All I was hoping for was at that point to be drafted by the Phillies. I know the Phillies had just won the World Series against Kansas City, and I was at Game 6 with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
The only game I ever went to in my whole life with my dad was at Game 6, and we got tickets from Ruben Amaro Sr. because he was the first base coach. So we were right behind the dugout, and that was just an incredible experience to be with my dad. And lo and behold, 6-7 months later, I'm drafted, by the Royals, which was hilarious because I was like screaming and saying bad words about everybody on the Royals and saying Mike Schmidt's way better than George Brett and all that stuff. And next thing you know, I'm living with George Brett 2 years later. It's pretty funny.
You thought you had a chance to be a first round draft choice, and you were picked very early in the second round, so it wasn't like you fell. But was there some kind of disappointment at that point?
Yes, a major. I know there was going to be obviously there were going to be a later round, but late pick in the first round because they were the world champions. So I was like, okay, the 28th pick would have been the Phillies, whatever, and 27th the Royals. But then I don't get picked by the Phillies, and I was bumming, in that first round. So then you hear I was up playing stickball and everything with my buddies, and my dad came driving by. They had that compensation pick because Darrell Porter left the Royals and signed with the Cardinals, so they had a pick in between, their first round, and their second round pick. So my dad came driving up, and he had this distinctive sounding car, so I knew he was coming up, and I was wondering why he was coming up. We're playing stickball, but he goes, "Hey, son, come here." I'm like, "Yeah, Dad." And he goes, "You got drafted by the Royals," and I was like bummed initially because like they just played the Phillies in the World Series, and I wanted to be a Philly with all my might. And my dad immediately says, "Son, do you realize the Royals win every year?" I go, "Yeah, that's true. Pretty good organization to be drafted by." I said as soon as he said it in that words, I was completely cool being drafted by the Royals, and all I could think about was getting down to camp and getting going. Because David Cohn, who ended up being one of my best friends, was drafted like right next to me in the draft pick. So we became friends, and to this day, we're still friends.
You could, as everybody could at that point in time, if they had any kind of grade. I mean, obviously, you could have gone to college baseball. You're a compensation pick. You probably, if you went to college, you would have gone to Duke, which certainly is a great opportunity. And it was a lot. College was expensive, and bonuses weren't as great. Were you almost for sure going to be a pro?
That's the thing, because John Shiros at that point, who he's in the Hall of Fame now, and ended up being our GM in Kansas City, and then eventually on Atlanta, where he had both places had so much success. He was the head of our farm system at that point, so he came to my house, and here I am with my dad and my mom. I had verbally committed to Duke at that point, although I loved Georgia, I loved Alabama when I went there. I went to Ohio State as far as my visits. But I said, I'm going to Duke University. I mean, I met Coach K there, and it was just something about Duke. The campus was close enough for my parents to drive there, go see me play. But then John Shiros was there, and he made an offer. And my dad looked at me and goes, "Son, you make the decision." And, they guided me. I think my dad was kind of leaning, let me do what I want to do. Obviously, he had experience playing minor league ball, but it wasn't a great experience for him. My mom was adamant about me going to college, and she wanted me to go, especially going to Duke University, and they drove with me to that campus, and it was absolutely amazing. I mean, their baseball program was pretty good, but it wasn't, at that point, like Georgia and Alabama. But, it was a really good program, and they had some connection with people from Philly going down to Duke, including David Amaro. So, I sat there, and I sat by myself. My mom and dad were, just sitting a little bit away from me. John Shiros was there, and then all of a sudden I got up and said, "Mr. Shiros, I want to play for the Royals." And he goes, "Boom, all right, let's get this thing done." And my dad was like, he shook my hand and gave me a hug. My mom gave me a hug, but she was crying because she wanted me to go to Duke so bad. But my mind was I was going to give this a 4-year shot. If it didn't work out, I I promised my mom and my dad